Hello, my friends. I am so glad you are here today. Take a slow breath and settle into your seat. Make yourself comfortable. Because tonight we are going on a journey together, a journey that spans nearly 1,000 years and crosses an entire continent. This is a story about gold, about power, about faith, and most importantly, about the human spirit that refuses to be diminished no matter how impossible the circumstances may seem. Let this story begin, and I promise you, by the end, you will never think about wealth or success in the same way again. Picture with me, if you will, the year 1324. Imagine standing on the edge of a road that stretches across the vast African continent. And then, in the distance, you hear it. Footsteps. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The ground begins to tremble, and then you see them. A massive procession unlike anything the world has ever witnessed. There are 60 camels, each carrying 200 pounds of pure gold dust. There are 80 camels carrying salt, which in that time was worth more than we can imagine. There are 12,000 servants, each dressed in silk and gold. There are heralds walking ahead, blowing trumpets to announce the arrival of their master. And riding on a decorated horse, surrounded by guards and advisors, is a man so unbelievably wealthy that historians and economists across the world agree on one thing: this man, in his time, was the richest person who has ever lived. This is the story of Mansa Musa, and it is perhaps the most extraordinary story you have never heard. Mansa Musa was born around the year 1280 in the city of Niani, the capital of the Mali Empire. Now let me paint the world he was born into, because it is essential to understand where he came from in order to appreciate what he became. The Mali Empire in the late 13th century was already remarkable. It stretched across what is now modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Nigeria, Chad, and Mauritania. The empire controlled the gold mines of Wangara, which produced more gold than any other region in the world at that time. Can you imagine that? An entire empire built on gold, a substance that has driven human ambition and conflict for thousands of years. Musa's grandfather was the great Sundiata Keita, the founder of the Mali Empire, a man who united warring tribes and created a civilization that would become one of the most prosperous in the world. Think about that for a moment. Musa was not just born into wealth, he was born into royalty, into power, into a legacy that stretched back generations. But being born into royalty does not mean life was easy. Think about this. Musa was not the first in line to become emperor. He was the grandson of Sundiata, and in the Mali Empire, the crown did not simply pass from grandfather to grandson. The system was more complex, more challenging. There were uncles, cousins, other princes who all wanted the same thing: the throne. And so when Musa was a young boy, growing up in the palace in Niani, he learned something that would shape his entire character. He learned that patience is not just a virtue, patience is a weapon. He watched, he listened. He studied the art of diplomacy and leadership. He learned to speak multiple languages, including Arabic, which was essential for a ruler who would one day need to communicate with scholars and traders across the Islamic world. He studied the Quran and the principles of Islamic governance. He understood that being a great ruler required wisdom, discipline, and the ability to make difficult decisions. Before he became emperor, Musa served as a regional governor. Imagine that. The man who would become the richest person in history first learned to govern by managing a smaller territory, a province of the empire. He learned how to collect taxes, how to settle disputes, how to maintain order, how to earn the respect of his people. This is a pattern we see again and again in history, is it not? The greatest leaders almost always had a period of preparation, a time when they were being shaped for something larger than they could imagine. But the world was not finished with Musa. Around the year 1310, something happened that would change everything. The ruling emperor, Musa's uncle, decided to send a massive naval expedition across the Atlantic Ocean. Hundreds of ships were built, thousands of men were recruited, and the fleet set sail into the unknown. But here is the tragedy that shaped Musa's destiny forever. None of those ships ever returned. Every single one of them was lost at sea. The emperor was on that expedition and never came back. Can you imagine the chaos, the uncertainty, the void that this created? A throne with no clear heir, an empire in mourning, a power vacuum that could tear everything apart. And then something extraordinary occurred. Because of this disaster, because of this massive loss, Musa was elevated to the position of Mansa, which means emperor or sultan. He inherited an empire, yes, but he also inherited enormous pressure. The people were looking to him for stability, for protection, for continued prosperity. The neighboring kingdoms were watching, wondering if the Mali Empire had become weak. And Musa understood that he needed to do something dramatic, something that would demonstrate the power and wealth of his empire to the entire world. And that is when he made a decision that would create one of the most legendary journeys in human history. He decided to make a pilgrimage to Mecca. A pilgrimage means a sacred journey to a holy place. And for Muslims, the holy place is Mecca, in what is now Saudi Arabia. Making the Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, a duty that every able Muslim should perform at least once in their lifetime. But here is what made Musa's pilgrimage unlike anything that had come before, or that would ever come after. When Musa departed from Mali in 1324, he did not travel quietly. He traveled with the largest and most extravagant procession the world had ever seen. Think about that for a moment. Imagine 80 camels carrying nothing but salt, salt which was so valuable that in many parts of Africa, it was literally worth its weight in gold. Imagine 60 camels carrying hundreds of pounds of pure gold dust. Imagine 12,000 servants all dressed in fine silk and gold thread, walking in formation to announce the arrival of their master. And imagine, as you traveled from city to city, giving gold away freely, so much gold that you actually depressed the economies of the lands you passed through. This is not an exaggeration. This actually happened. When Musa and his procession passed through Cairo, which was one of the greatest cities in the world at that time, he gave away so much gold that he actually caused inflation in Egypt that lasted for years afterward. Can you picture that? One man's wealth was so vast that it destabilized the economy of an entire region. The historians of that time wrote about it. They were amazed. They were stunned. They could not believe what they were witnessing. And Musa did not do this to show off. He did this because in his understanding, giving away wealth was an act of faith, an expression of gratitude to God, and a demonstration of the prosperity his empire possessed. But here is what is most remarkable about Musa. He did not just spend his wealth on extravagant displays. He used it to build something lasting, something that would transform his empire and leave a legacy for centuries to come. When he returned from his pilgrimage, he brought back architects, scholars, and judges from the Islamic world. He began construction on the great mosque at Timbuktu, which later became the University of Sankore, one of the greatest centers of learning in the medieval world. Picture this, my friends. In the 14th century, while much of Europe was still in the Dark Ages, Musa was building universities in the heart of Africa. He was creating libraries, establishing schools, attracting scholars from across the Islamic world to come and study and teach in Timbuktu. The city became a beacon of knowledge, a place where mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and literature were studied and advanced. And all of this was possible because of the wealth and vision of one man. Think about what that means. One person, with enough resources and enough vision, can create institutions that outlast them by hundreds of years. One person can build something that continues to grow and serve humanity long after they are gone. This is the power of ambition combined with means, and it is something we should all reflect upon. But the world was not finished testing Musa. After he returned from Mecca, Musa launched another expedition to explore the Atlantic. Perhaps he was hoping to find what his uncle had been seeking. Perhaps he wanted to expand his empire's reach even further. And this expedition also failed. It was attacked. Many of his soldiers were killed. And Musa himself was captured and held for a long time. This was a humbling experience for the richest man in the world. He was forced to recognize his own vulnerability, his own limitations. He was freed eventually, but the experience changed him. It taught him that wealth and power do not make you invincible, that life can humble even the most mighty. We all have moments when we feel invincible, when we think we have everything under control, and then something happens that reminds us of our fragility, our humanity. These humbling experiences, if we let them, can make us wiser, more compassionate, more aware of the struggles that others face. Now, let me bring this story to you, my friends. Let me speak directly to you for a moment. Perhaps you are listening to this story, and you feel far away from the world of 14th century African empires. But I want you to see yourself in this story, because the patterns are the same. Musa was born into a world of challenges and obstacles. He faced uncertainty, competition, moments when everything could have fallen apart. But he kept going. He kept learning, growing, building. He did not let his circumstances define his destiny. And yes, he had advantages that most of us do not have. He was born into royalty. He had access to resources beyond imagination. But even with all those advantages, he still had to make choices, still had to face difficulties, still had to persist when things got hard. Think about that the next time you face a challenge that seems insurmountable. Maybe you are learning English right now, and maybe it feels impossible. Maybe the words do not come easily. Maybe you make mistakes. Maybe you feel embarrassed. Maybe you wonder if you will ever really master this language. I want you to remember Mansa Musa. Remember that he faced obstacles that seemed impossible. Remember that he had to rebuild after making mistakes. Remember that his legacy was not about perfection. It was about persistence, about vision, about faith in something larger than himself. And now you, in your own way, are doing the same thing. Every word you learn is like a grain of gold dust, small and perhaps insignificant on its own, but together, over time, they accumulate into something extraordinary. Every lesson you complete, every conversation you practice, is building something that will last. You are constructing your own university of knowledge, your own legacy of capability. There are days when you feel like giving up. I know there are. There are days when the progress is so slow that you cannot even see it, when you wonder if any of it matters. On those days, remember this story. Remember that Musa built Timbuktu brick by brick, lesson by lesson, scholar by scholar. Remember that his greatest achievements did not happen overnight. They happened because he was patient, because he was consistent, because he kept showing up, day after day, year after year, building something that would outlast him. You are doing the same thing right now. You are building something that will outlast your current struggles, that will serve you for the rest of your life, that will open doors you cannot even imagine yet. I am so proud of you for being here, for choosing to spend your time in this way, for investing in yourself and your future. Learning a language is one of the hardest things a person can do, and you are doing it. That is powerful. That is remarkable. And that is something to be proud of, right now, in this moment, regardless of how much or how little you feel you have learned. So here is my question for you before we close. What part of Musa's journey surprised you the most? Was it the size of his pilgrimage? Was it the way he gave away gold so freely? Was it the universities he built? Or was it the human side of him, the mistakes he made, the vulnerabilities he showed? I would love to hear what you think. Leave a comment below and tell me which part of the story touched you most. And if you learned a new word or phrase today, if this story helped you in any way, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because there are so many people out there who are struggling the way you once struggled, and your story might be the encouragement they need. Keep listening, keep learning, keep going. Your story is still being written, and the best chapters are ahead. There are many more journeys waiting here, many more stories of people who faced the impossible and came out the other side. I will see you in the next one. This is Talwise English.